All right, a cold, overcast day here at Gray Whale Cove. I'm going to try to do a 1-hour painting today. This is a scene I've painted before, but I'm going to try a little bit of a different composition today. I'll be using my usual limited palette of colors, and I'll be painting over an old 11 by 14 inch panel. I'm starting with a dark mixture of ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, burnt sienna, and a touch of alizarin crimson. I did an initial sketch using some burnt sienna and titanium white just because I want to get little bits of orange into the painting. Right now I'm just quickly sketching out the plants in the foreground using the dark mixture I made, and then also a number 6 natural bristle flat for my brush. And I'm not really particular about getting the drawing perfect at this point. I just want to block in some big shapes and eliminate the old painting as quickly as possible. I've dragged in some cadmium yellow medium into my mix here. I'm also adding a bit of alizarin crimson to warm up the green. It's for this portion right here in the foreground. I am starting with my darkest shapes, just focusing on shapes at this point. I've mixed up a brownish gray here using titanium white, ultramarine blue, and some burnt sienna. I think this mix could be a little bit dark, but it's a decent starting point. The previous painting was a seascape, mostly light in value, so it's actually helping me get a feel for the sky and the water already, because the sky and the water are pretty light value today. Still using the number 6 natural bristle flat. All right, so that's the composition right there. I feel like I do need to cool off the distant land and lighten up the value, but I think what I'll do next is put in the water. All right, for the water, I've got a mixture of titanium white, ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, and some burnt sienna. This mixture is my usual starting point for seawater. The burnt sienna will push the mix towards green, and it also gray down the mix a little bit. All right, so the rocks along the waterline of the distant shore are pretty dark in value. So I'm just gonna sketch out some of those dark shapes. I am squinting at the scene in order to reduce it to simple shapes. I am using the scene as inspiration. I'm not painting it exactly as I see it. All right, I've got a darker blue-green mix along the base of the land. And I will be adding white water along here as well eventually. All right, so there is the block in. It's been about 15 minutes so far. And what I'm gonna do now is go in and refine the shapes of these plants here. I'm looking at these cypress here for inspiration, but I'm also looking at some of the other cypress in the area as well. That's one of the advantages of plein air painting, is that you can pull in elements that are outside of the picture frame. If you're painting from a photograph, you're just limited to the information that's on the photograph. All right, so I've mixed in some permanent red medium into my dark mix, suggesting some trunks and branches. I'm not actually seeing this color in the scene, but I do want to get some red into the scene if at all possible. Some quick spontaneous strokes here. Got a loaded number 6 natural bristle flat here, and I've got a warm dark green, and just trying to build up these dark shapes. Trying to keep a lot of paint on the brush. Reloading often. It's sort of difficult to motivate this week just because the weather has not been great. I think the thing that's helped me grow the most as a painter is just getting out as much as possible, even when I'm not feeling particularly inspired. Gray days have always been a challenge for me because I like to paint light, and the light on a gray day is not very spectacular. But I found that by focusing on abstract shapes, I can sometimes get results that I'm happy with on a gray day, primarily when I'm painting seascapes. Landscapes and cityscapes on gray days, I still haven't figured out how to make those work. For the sky, I'm starting with a mixture of titanium white and ultramarine blue. Sometimes I try to work with the paint that's already on the panel, but in this case, it was a cerulean sky, which does not go with the light of this particular scene. It's more of a sky you'd have on a sunny day. There we go. All right, now I'm using a number 4 synthetic flat to restate some of the darks along the shoreline. In reality, these dark rocks are the darkest value in the scene. However, I may have to lighten them up in order to push this landmass into the distance. We'll see. The same brush to add a bit of variation in value and temperature to this landmass here. I am lightening it up a bit to push it back. Still using the number 4 synthetic flat. Now adding a bit of warm green, since there's some ice plant growing on these hills. I'm not sure if I'll keep the green on here, but I'm going to experiment and see how I like it. Going with a bluish gray for some of the rocks along the waterline. I think I went a bit warm with the mix, so I'm cooling it down with some titanium white and some gray. The colors will seem less saturated when I get the painting indoors, so I'm keeping that in mind. But still, I do think that for an overcast day, I went a bit too warm in these colors here. All right, I've mixed up a Viridian color here using phthalo blue, cadmium yellow medium, and titanium white. Adding some waves here. And the waves come in on an angle like that. So I've got one here, and then another one down here. Adding some white water to these distant rocks. And I'm using titanium white tinted with a bit of alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue, sort of a purplish mix. All right, adding some opening in the trees. This is something that I often overlooked in the past, and my trees would just seem like solid shapes. It's really helpful to have these little bits of light coming through the trees, opening them up a bit. Now adding a bit of variation to this ice plant in the foreground. Got a warmer, lighter value green here, just to add some of the lighter bits of these cypress but I do not want to break up the overall shapes. I think the value of some of these lighter bits is maybe a bit too light. Still using this number 4 synthetic flat. But I've got a mix of titanium white and a little bit of burnt sienna. I'm seeing little hints of light in the sky. So I've decided to add those bits of light. I find that burnt sienna and titanium white makes a really nice, warm, light value yellow. All right, so here's what I finished up with. As I mentioned, my goal was to complete this painting in an hour or less. I feel like setting time limits is a great way to loosen up your brushwork. I find that when I paint quickly, the results are often much better than when I'm careful and take my time. Painting on overcast days or gray days is difficult just because the light is sort of flat. There are no shadows to work with. However, it's a good chance to work on composing with shapes. To my surprise, a little bit of sun did break through in the clouds, and I think that having that little bit of light in the sky actually does really help draw the eye into the distance. I am always looking for little bits of light in the sky or glare on the water or some sort of light that I can incorporate into the painting because it does make such a difference in the final product. As I was packing up my gear, the sun came out. I decided to do another painting. This is also an 11x14 painted over an old panel. This painting was done in about 20 minutes, really fast, really spontaneous, and I actually think some nice things are going on here, and I'm kind of inspired to go back out and set a limit of, say, 20 or 30 minutes. An hour seems like plenty of time. It's kind of a comfortable amount of time. But 20 minutes or 30 minutes, I've really got to work quickly. And the idea is that I just don't overthink it. I'm not worried about the results. I am just reacting to the scene as quickly as possible. As a result, there's a lot of nice energy in this painting. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to see some extra videos and help support the channel, there's a Patreon link down below. It's the Patreon support that helps keep me making these videos, and it's much appreciated. I also put a PayPal tip jar down below as well, so check it out. Other than that, stay creative. I'll see you guys in the next video.